Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be a little bit different because if you follow us, you might know that Rubin and I are back in school, meaning that we have less time to do videos. Now, I'm still going to try to get content out to you guys, and good content at that. I didn't get a chance to have something research intensive prepared for this week, so I decided instead to do a week by week rundown of some of the classes that we're taking. So I don't know what Ruben's going to do, but I decided to at least bring you guys some stuff on classical mythology. And because this is my first year back at school, I have to take all the introductory courses. So some of it, it's just really simple, which is nice. But aside from just having content, teaching a subject also helps me learn the subject, because if I'm teaching something wrong, if I have something wrong, I want to know. And if I have the wrong idea, I can't teach somebody properly. So it's a good way for me to make sure I'm understanding the content. So the first thing we did in my classical mythology course was talk about sources. And this includes the classics like Ovid and Virgil and Homer and all those guys. But the main idea behind all of this, and the first week in general, was basically defining a myth. So we were all given these flashcards to write down our personal definitions of myth, and then we were split up into groups and we had to come up with the best definition. So here are some of the definitions I gave. And this wasn't just a coherent definition, this was more bullet points of what is included in a myth. Allegory or illusions about the history of a people's or world, involving cosmic or supernatural entities, has explanatory power for events or moral truths referencing the divine. Now that was my answer, but apparently it could have been way simpler than that. I thought we were looking for some super specific definition, so I really tried. But here is what the class came up with in general. It was that stuff included, but also can't be proven 100%. It has to be anonymous. It has to first begin as oral and then be written down later. Those are just some of the examples of the definitions given, and more or less what the teacher ended up using. She brought up the point that there are different versions of these classical myths, Roman and Greek myths, and how none of them are the right one. One may be older than the other, but it doesn't mean that one is necessarily better than the other or more accurate. They are both the myth. Now, the one issue I had with accepting that myths had to be anonymous was something popped into my head. Euhemeris. So, if you guys don't know who Euhemeris is, he was a 3rd century BCE mythographer, meaning myth writer. He would write stories about the gods that the people already believed in, and then put them on Earth doing real things, and he gave them a background, basically. For example, he took Uranus and Zeus and put them on Earth as kings, and then had them die at the end. So that's the kind of stuff Euhemeris did, and people actually did end up believing the things that he said. At least some people. I ended up sending the teacher an email and asking her, would you consider this a myth? I mean, a lot of people believed the things Euhemeris wrote, but it's obviously not anonymous, and it contains almost everything else we would include as a myth. So I was just curious to know if she saw it as a myth, if she would qualify it as a myth. She never gave me an answer to that. It was more of just explaining Euhemeris in general, and I'm like, well, I know about a decent amount about Euhemeris. I emailed you about him, but that's beside the point. I brought up how Diodorus actually took from the histories of Euhemeris, and I also brought up how Plutarch was calling everyone who believed in the myths of Euhemeris atheists. And at that point in time, atheist really just meant anyone who didn't believe in the Roman gods. So I sent her links to this stuff, and I explained how it became popular to do this thing. For example, in the apocryphal Life of Adam and Eve, or I think it's also known as the Apocalypse of Moses, Satan and Michael, angels that were already believed in, were written on Earth. They were written into history on Earth at the Tigris River and what's the other river? Jordan. They were also at the Jordan River. But that process of turning celestial beings that people already believed in and writing them on Earth, doing real things at real places, was called Euhemerization. It was named after him. But I never really got a good answer as to whether or not she would consider it a myth. I would. I would consider what he did myth. And if you're still curious as to what exactly constitutes a myth, I pulled up Richard Carrier's definition of myth that he includes in On the Historicity of Jesus. Characteristics of myth are strong and meaningful emulation of prior myths, or even of real events, the presence of historical improbabilities, which are not limited to miracles but can include natural events that are very improbable, like amazing coincidences or unrealistic behavior, and the absence of external corroboration of key rather than peripheral elements, because a myth can incorporate real people and places, but the central character or event will still be fictional. No one of these criteria is sufficient to identify a narrative as mythical, but the presence of all three is conclusive. And the presence of one or two can also be sufficient when sufficiently telling. We also discussed the difference between true myth and true legend. True myths include divine beings, and the stories pertain to religious rituals or beliefs. When on the other hand, true legends, or sagas, usually contain a hero that is immortal, and the stories are related to historical events. But that's pretty much all for this week's video. That was week 1 in Classical Mythology 170. I'm probably going to have more stuff for you. I'm working on a huge video on the Golden Calf narrative because I find it really interesting. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure not to miss us on Atheist Sunday School. That's not going anywhere. That's going to go strong, and hopefully we can have higher quality content out for you guys in spite of the fact that Rubin and I are in school and trying to do this. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you like what we do, please consider donating on Patreon. There are lots of great perks. If you love us and don't want to continually give us money, then you can consider just buying a t-shirt on Teespring. You get an awesome t-shirt in return for your money. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't, and check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We share stuff pretty often. And make sure to check out our website, MilwaukeeAtheist.com. But that's all for this video. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.